In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you some very important things to look for in your decision letter, no matter if it is approved or not. You really want to see this section of your decision letter to make sure that they utilized everything that you submitted when you submitted your claim. This is very important because, as you will see, the VA does not always use or include everything that you have sent to them. And I'm going to share with you an example right here from a veteran who received many denials, submitted, I think, 18 claims, 19 claims, and many of them were denied. But there's something very important to look out, especially if your claim was denied. So let's get right into it. So what I did is basically copy and paste the decision letter here on a Word document. I removed all personal information so I could just scroll right through it. But this is, from a decision letter from the VA for this veteran. So you'll see that there are different sections in your decision letter. Of course, there's going to be an introduction talking about a little short bit of the veteran, then the decisions, right? Now, you'll notice here that all of these are denied, 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 right? This veteran, right? Denied, denied, denied. This veteran served in the late 90s, early 2000, and he was a mechanic. So if you can imagine, you got to think back in the late 90s, early 2000s, like what was going on, what safety precautions were they using at that time. And he mentioned, as a mechanic, didn't matter what the weather was. Oftentimes he was in situations where they closed the doors down, and they would run vehicles. He was exposed to a lot of different chemicals, and back then, not like you see today, where a lot of people, mechanics, are using rubber gloves. And back then, that wasn't the case, right? Late 90s, you have some grease on your hands. There was a lot of grease, a lot of rags that you would just wipe your hand and keep going. But that oil, those lubricants, those toxins, you can, you're rubbing your forehead, you rub your eyes, and, just these toxins that this veteran could have been exposed to or was exposed to during his military, his time in the military. So let's keep going. So you're going to see that there are more denials, more denials, denied, denied, denied. And you're thinking, imagine being this veteran where everything comes back and it's denied. Then you'll notice here where now there's a lot of, we get to the point where there's a lot of pending. Okay. So it looks like there were 19 different issues. And right here, pending medical outcome, another one pending medical outcome or medical opinion, I should say, medical opinion, and pending outcome verification, right? There's some things that they're going to look for. If you say something happened in the military, they're going to look for that verification, medical opinion, right? So you look at this, and you're like, wow, 19 claims, 11 of them were denied, and there's so you have 7 or 8 more that are pending. So as the veteran, you probably just toss this and thinking, man, if I got denied for all of these, I'm potentially going to be denied for everything, right? And that's just not the case. But here's the most important part is the evidence section. So right here in this evidence section, you can look at your decision letter, and this section here is one of the most important sections to look at, because if you look at this section here for this veteran, it's going to show, right? Let's just go over it real quick. So here he had a file, intent to file, right? They put that in the evidence. I'm not sure exactly why, but okay, we know that this veteran submitted an intent to file. Second, the application for disability compensation. Okay. Next, of course, service records, of course, right? Treatment records, of course, DD 214, right? And this one, if you watched another video of mine, I talk about how they took in consideration Terra when there were no toxic exposures for that had to do with anything with, I believe it was PTSD and TMJ. So with this veteran, it's different. He was exposed to a lot of different toxins, so they needed to take in consideration Terra. Now, if we scroll down a little more here, you're going to see here where it talks about individual longitudinal exposure record, right? There's something about when we submitted this claim, when we submitted this claim, we also included his MOS and things that he was exposed to. Excuse me. So when we submitted the claim for the veteran, we added an additional document that stated what his MOS was. It was an individual document. What his MOS was. He was a mechanic. The MOS, everything, and the potential toxins that he was exposed to or had to deal with for his job specifically. And you'll notice that that's nowhere near, there's no evidence of that. Now, we do know that they're taking in consideration Terra, right? Which, okay. But if they're listing everything, which they should, right? Because they're listing the intent to file, they're listing the application. Like, I really don't even think those are necessarily necessary, but they did. So then we come down here and look for other medical records, um, additional medical records. Now here, it looks like, and there's veterans who submit a claim with a DBQ. And it might be, okay, disability benefits questionnaire, and that be, okay, that was the DBQ. But when you look further into it, the DBQ, and it states the date, it only states, now here is X10. I don't know what honestly, X10 means. Does that mean that there's 10 of them? I don't know. We could definitely call to find out. But to me, if this is just one, which there shouldn't just be one, because here's another thing. They're saying there was a disability benefits questionnaire, a DBQ, from VES. However, we submitted a DBQ from a medical professional. And this is the part that I want to emphasize to you, that when you're looking at their decision letter, especially if it was denied, you want to take a hard look at everything they have under evidence that they used to make a decision for your claim. So all those claims that were denied, you might have been thinking, wait, what did you guys do for this guy? Or what did this veteran do, right? There are so many things missing. There are lay statements from his sister, from his father. There are DBQs missing. There are witness statements. right? There was a part where, oh yeah, you remember? If I'll go back here, it was right here. This verification, right here, pending outcome of stressor verification. He was able to contact someone who he served with and witnessed an accident. And where's that? This is not in here. This is not part of the evidence. Where excuse me, where is that located? It's not in here. So you have research. There was research that was added to there was to his personal statement, and there was a nexus letter. So immediately, what is this? What is this like? Really, just screaming to me, who's someone who knows how to read these decision letters, and I'll show you here in a minute how it just looked like they copied and pasted the reasons why they denied each one. And how they didn't take in consideration things that were very important for all the things that were denied. All these things right here that were denied. There are MRI scans. Well, that could be part of that could be part of these treatment records, right? So the point that I want to make in this video is if your claim was denied, you want to look at the evidence. You want to see what they included. And this is why it's important for your claim to take ownership of your claim, no matter who is sending it, that you have a copy of everything that was sent. And it's also good to have perhaps a list of everything that was submitted, so that when it comes time to look over the evidence section in your decision letter, you can look and see, did they include everything that's on your list? And it should. It should be on there, so that in the event that if it's denied, and we'll go here in a section for reasons for decision, you can then request a higher level review because they did not take in consideration the documentation, the research, DBQs, whatever it might be, in consideration for their decision. So this section is vitally important. And for you as the veteran, no matter if you or someone else helps you, to have a list of everything that is submitted, so that once again, when it comes time to reading this decision letter, especially if it's denied, to verify and to use that against them, or in your claim that they didn't take in consideration everything that you had provided. In addition, now you want to look at the evidence also if your claim was approved, because as I mentioned in other videos, they are gonna, if they award you, they're gonna indicate why it didn't go to the next level. And if they didn't take in consideration something that you submitted, that's higher level review. So whether you get denied or approved, you want to make sure that they used everything that you submitted to them in this decision letter. Okay, so let's look at let's look at some of these reasons for their decision. Now here it's talking about degenerative arthritis, and if you'll notice that here they're using so some different CFR. So 38 CFR 3.303, same here, 3.303 and 3.304. Remember, if these are codes that you are not familiar with, head on over to the GPT. Once again, if you don't have access to the GPT that can help you with buddy statements, lay statements, personal statements, any kind of documentation, type in comment GPT and you can get a copy of that right here. So it looks like, I mean, they're using the same 38 CFR, right? And this is also good information for you as the veteran if you haven't seen any of these things, because look right here. We did not find a link between your medical condition and military service. That's where a nexus letter could come in, right? Look at this. In-service event, right? One of the three does not show an event, disease, or injury or service. Excuse me, right? So you have to have, once again, evidence. All approved claims are evidence-based claims, right? Let's look at this right here. Your service records, right? The veteran service records do not contain complaints, treatment, or diagnosis for the condition. If you watch the video about IBS, or where I was covering IBS, where a veteran received 0%, you'll see that there were there's no records. There was no diagnosis. There were no treatments. There were no complaints of IBS. So even though it is a presumptive, it doesn't mean that you're going to receive 10, 20, 30% and something that can help you increase your percentage, your percentage rating. You've got to have it in your treatment records. Once again, that's the evidence. And then the veteran received a 0. So then it shows what that next level would be for 10%. And it shows what would be required in treatment records to warrant that next percentage. So let's continue. Right here, post-service treatment records. Once again, there was no continuity of symptoms from service to present, which looks like what 38 CFR 3.303 is about. And you'll notice as I scroll down, let's look at the next one. All the same things. Did not show evident event, disease, or injury. There was no link between your medical conditions. Your service records do not contain complaints, treatment, or diagnosis. The same thing as the first one, right? There was no continuity of symptoms, right? And here's another one, right, where it says, please note that although the examiner expressed a positive opinion that your degenerative arthritis, other than post-traumatic right wrist, were at least likely as not caused by, now look at this. It's stating, once again, the examiner, the CMP, right here, the CMP examiner expressed a positive opinion that your degenerative arthritis from the right wrist were least as likely as not caused in service. This statement was based on recounted lay evidence. Recounted lay evidence is the written report of verbal statements made by the veteran during an examination without basis in objective medical or other objective evidence. Therefore, the examiner's opinion is found not to be probative, as there is no medical or other objective evidence to support the opinion. The examiner's opinion is found not to be probative as it is based. Look at this. The examiner's opinion is found not to be probative as it was based on subjective statements only and is not consistent with clinical records. So what this is saying is that even though the veteran has it, and this is where the VA is saying, and oftentimes the VA will use their examiner's opinion higher than a medical qualified personnel. In this case, they're saying that even though the examiner said that there was a positive opinion that your degenerative arthritis, well, here it's saying at least as likely as not caused in service, because here it then goes into the veteran, and this is right here, the verbal statements made by the veteran during an examination without a basis in objective medical or other objective evidence. Once again, there's the word evidence. So basically, here, the veteran went to the exam, made statements, but there's nothing to back it up. That's why it's so important when you go into a C&P exam, you're consistent with what you say that's backed by medical evidence. So, for example, let's say, for example, somebody's saying, "Oh yeah, I have stomach issues," and and so they have a CMP for IBS. Let's just say, for example, and there's no medical records or indicating medications, symptoms, issues, and then he goes to the CMP exam and he's like, "Yeah, I have diarrhea every day." He might have gotten some information online. "Yeah, I have diarrhea every day. It impacts my life. I can't do this. I can't do that." That's not good. So you have to, if this is an honest medical issue, there should be no problem. And I've had videos where, for veterans to be prepared for these CMP exams, not to say anything specific, but to be consistent what's already in the medical records. You go to these CMP exams and they're going to ask you, "What's wrong? Why are you here?" And you might be thinking, "Well, didn't you look at my medical records?" That's my first thought. But then they just want you to repeat what's already in your medical records to see if you're going to be more exaggerated. You're going to be exaggerating, thinking that that's going to win your claim. So you want to be consistent with what's in your medical records, with what's, again, evidence for your claim. Let's continue. Right here, once again, all evidence have been reviewed and weighed according to 38 CFR 4.6. Both VA and non-VA evidence were objectively weighed in determinations of competency, credibility, thoroughness, precision, relevancy, and probative value. This includes the examiner's qualifications, their knowledge of the relevant history, sufficient of examination or medical opinion, and the context which the medical evidence was created. Any conflicting evidence has, look at this, has evaluated considering whether witnesses have a personal interest in the issue, if there is a basis for the bias, if one party had a better opportunity to know the facts, and which version is more reasonable and probable. The totality of the evidence was considered. So what this is saying is that in medical terminology and in kind of, sophisticated way, it's basically saying any conflicting evidence, once again, evidence, as evaluated, considering whether witnesses have a personal interest in the issue, if there is a basis for bias, right? So the VA has to take in consideration lay statements, buddy statements. That is the case. But here it's stating that, look, there's conflicting information. In the medical records, it says one thing, but the lay statements don't consist with what's in the medical records and what the VA and the veteran said during the examination. They're not consistent. So the way lay statements and buddy statements help is when everything's congruent. What's in the medical records, what the veteran says in his personal statement and during C&P exams. This is why it's so important that everything is consistent. A veteran, in all honesty, should not be worried or concerned about the C&P exam. There is concern often to make sure that the veteran states what he should state based off of medical evidence and not to exaggerate, not to make things up, and to know what's in those buddy statements and those lay statements, so everything is congruent, so that when the rater is looking at this and knowing there is no conflicting information, it's all correct. And yes, the veteran was here, this veteran witnessed it. There's consistent medical documentation, there's consistent complaints, there's medication. Every approved claim is an evidence-based claim. So there's no making anything up. It's got to be consistent and it's got to be true. And so oftentimes veterans think, man, what do I need to say when I go to a C&P exam? You say what's in your medical records. You say what you're suffering from. And the reason for the document that I had encouraged veterans to do is just to stay consistent and just to share with that C&P examiner and not be tripped up to be thinking, okay, what do I need to say, right? Just say what's on your medical record. Say what you are suffering from. So let's continue. And so basically all the ones that were denied are all the same, right? There's no event, there's no medical condition, right? They looked at post-service records, all the same, right? Right here, service connection for degenerative disc disease other than intervertebral disc syndrome to include intervertebral disc syndrome is denied since this condition neither occurred in nor was caused by service. Look, this is not right. This is not right. We can argue with this, right? The veteran was a mechanic. He was in different positions all the time. He had to work. I mean, this was the late 90s, early 20s. There were, different situations, different angles, different things above his shoulder, things, hunched over, right? So there are things that can be argued in these claims. So every single one of them, remember, it goes back to the evidence. Did they even use the evidence? And I already mentioned that there are things that are not in the evidence section, and it's not being used to show, or it wasn't used that should have been used. And I'm not saying these right here should have been approved, but there is a lot of evidence that was not included in the evidence section of the decision, and it should be, right? So I don't want to. So you basically see a lot of the continuation of right in service injury, right? There's got to be a current diagnosis, and there's got to be a connection, evidence based. So I just wanted to share this with you. More importantly, the section on evidence based, or the evidence that was used to determine this veteran's claim. And so the next step is to wait for the remaining claims to come through and for a decision to be made, and then look at those and then the next step would be for many of these that were denied for a higher level review, where the VA failed to um, take in consideration other things that were not mentioned in the evidence section. And this is very important. That's why I mentioned to have that list of things that were submitted with the claim, so that when you write a higher level review statement, you can state, I submitted X and it was not included in the evidence section. And it's so higher level reviews do not take in consideration new information. So you're just stating what was already submitted and not taking consideration. So once again, all claims are evidence-based claims, all approved claims, everything, all decisions are based off of evidence. There should never, there, and all evidence needs to be consistent. Buddy statements, lay statements, letters from family, the veteran's personal statement, medical documentation, all these claims will always be approved. That's why some companies say, we're evidence-based. Every claim that's been approved is evidence-based. It's all based off of evidence. Oftentimes, they won't take claims because they know they won't win because the veteran just doesn't have the evidence. And some of these companies, they make you pay up front, or they make you a percentage, but they only take those claims that they know they can look at a decision letter and be like, oh yeah, that's a higher level review. But if a veteran knew, and of course, right, you don't need to go and take a degree to learn how to do this stuff. And I know for some veterans, it's just take care of it for me, right? Whatever, my hope is to get to X percentage and move on with my life, right? So every claim is evidence-based. You want to stay consistent with every claim. And going into a CMP exam, no need to exaggerate, no need to worry. It's more about making sure that the examiner is going to do a good job. And you don't need to be and veterans shouldn't be going to a nurse practitioner when it's a TMJ issue, right? As an example, that's really the only concern. I know there are some, veterans who go in prepared and stay consistent and get claims approved because it's based on evidence. So once again, if you haven't watched the video, check it out. Evidence-based claims. What is it? It's really stuff that's in your medical records, your statements, what you say during a CMP exam. But there should be no worry of going to a CMP exam because you're just going to state what you suffer from. It's in the medical records. You have other witnesses. And there you have it, an approved claim. All right, so go check out that video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate your support.